everyone, my name is Cassie Hamer and I'm an author of 3 women's contemporary fiction novels. And today I wanted to share with you some ideas about books that you could buy for the writer in your life. Or if you're a writer and you listen to this podcast, which I know a lot of aspiring writers do, these are books that you might want to suggest to loved ones to purchase for you. Because if you're anything like me, you might find that Christmas and New Year isn't the most productive writing time. I have my kids on school holidays, but it is a really good time for thinking and planning out writing projects. So I've got some writing books that will give you some practical hints, some emotional support as you think about what you might write in 2023. Now, 2 of these books were published only this year. 2 of them are a bit older, but they're books that I keep coming back to time and again. So the first one I want to recommend is The Writer Laid Bare by Lee Kaufman. And this is a new book that was published this year. Lee is an Australian-based writer of both fiction and non-fiction. She's also a really popular writing teacher. I found this book just so reassuring as a writer. It's not so much a craft book, though there are some really good tips and hints in it, but it's more a memoir of writing. And Lee writes really beautifully about the challenges of the writing life, about being a parent and trying to combine that with writing, but also really focuses on how to achieve emotional honesty in your writing. Now, I'll just read from the first page of the book so you get a feel for what Leah's writing is like. And she says this: writing is meant to be difficult. Many writers, I'm sure, would nod vigorously at Thomas Mann's famous suggestion that writers are those for whom writing is more difficult than for other people. Writers understand the weight of words, and this understanding weighs on us. We know that each minute choice we make matters, that to express something truthfully and vividly is a feat. Now, as I said, this book is really comforting. Sometimes I feel reluctant to complain about the difficulty of writing, because how hard is it to sit at a computer and stare off into the window and try and make up stories about imaginary people, compared to, for instance, the job of looking after a child with additional needs or working in a factory in a repetitive job. Writing is hard, but it's not life hard. So this book is just a really nice way, though, to feel that you're not alone in accepting the challenges of the writing life. The second book that I want to recommend is also a pretty new one. It's called The Novel Project by Graham Simpson. That name is probably familiar to you because he's the Australian author of the internationally best-selling Rosie trilogy. And this year he decided to write a book about his process of writing. Now, you couldn't get 2 more contrasting styles than between Lee and Graham. Whereas Lee focuses on the emotional, artistic side of writing, Graham is very much about the practical. He has an IT background, and you can tell that he's a whiz with an Excel spreadsheet because he has an extremely methodical approach to writing. Now, here's a little piece from the book to give you a taste of what it's like. Graham writes, writing courses almost always focus on prose. Students workshop and are assessed on pieces of a few thousand words, but many struggle to scale up their sometimes beautiful and powerful writing into a novel. Basically, his argument is that a novel is a huge and unwieldy beast. And unless you at some point sit down and plan it out methodically and adopt some discipline to your writing process, that you're going to struggle to write a publishable novel. Now, you may agree or disagree with that, but this novel is full of really practical hints about how to get your words done, how to structure the novel, and then importantly, how to rewrite it. So I do recommend that one. The next one I'm going to recommend is a little bit older, but I'm sure that you could find this one in online bookshops if you wanted to. It's Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody, and this is based on the Blake Snyder Save the Cat which was written for screenwriting. And it's interesting that Graham Simpson talks a lot about how screenwriting informed his process of writing. And in the same way, Jessica Brody draws a lot on screenwriting principles, because at the end of the day, storytelling is storytelling. And the principles that people use to make a hugely successful feature film aren't necessarily that different to writing a successful commercial novel. So this one just outlines, I think it's 13, it's a method. It's quite a specific method, and it outlines the beats, as in the story plot points of a novel. And it's quite specific. For instance, the first beat is the opening image or setting up the character's life. The second beat is something like the inciting incident, and so on. It's based on that whole hero's journey style of storytelling, which you might think might not apply to every story that's told. But the genius of this book is that Jessica Brody goes through 10 different genres or 10 different types of stories and shows you how a template applies to each of those stories. Now, I do find this very helpful. You can use it either with planning out your novel, or you can use it in revising your novel and trying to work out where it's not working. So I definitely used it in the writing of my latest book, which was The Truth About Faking It. And what I did was that I made this big long sheet, and I had a column for each character because it's a 3-character point of view novel. And I went through, and it's a bit hard to see, but I wrote out each of the beats, opening image and theme stated. And then I wrote down for each character what that was. The next beat is the catalyst, inciting incident. The next beat is the debate. So I do find that a really helpful book, one that I come back to quite a bit. The last one I'm going to recommend is probably not that well known, but it's just been surprisingly helpful to me. It's called The Secrets of Story, and it's by Matt Bird. And I can't even remember who or why it was recommended to me. Again, it draws a lot on screenwriting examples, but it just goes into enormous detail about concepts and characters and a bit about plot. But what it's really good at, and so is Save the Cat is good at this, is about how you harness character and plot, because it's important, vital, in fact, that the two have intersection, so that in achieving the final outcome, the character is not just achieving an external goal, but they're solving the internal problem that's also been driving the story. And how you make those two things intersect is far from easy, but this is a really helpful book. As I say, it's got checklists and addresses some of the myths about character. For instance, something that always sticks in my head is that he says that your character has to be a winner and a loser. So they're not just one thing. You have to have lots of nuance within them. So there it is, my 4 recommendations of some really good writing craft books that you might suggest others buy for you, or that you might buy for yourself as a gift. I wish you a very happy Christmas and all the best in setting your writing goals for 2023.